We were
Go this way.
You were taunting everybody that came to try and find you.
Yeah. And they went, we're going to kill this guy. And we went, kill him.
Yeah, yeah. And
then
they did kill him.
Body.
Yeah.
And then we made a big arrow.
Yeah.
Because there was the two paths. We made an arrow out of the corpses that said this way.
And then his ghost came to haunt you when you tried to get out at the end.
But we've never actually we never finished that mission.
We never
You got, well, more or less you did, because you guys had a confrontation with the final boss. He had his
Is he the one that disappeared?
transitional moment.
He took the guy,
To a
right?
paladin.
Yeah.
So when are we going to play again?
As soon as we can find out, you know?
Soon.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to, what show is this? Star Citizen Live, Alpha 323 and beyond. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. If you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour at the end of our week to ask Rick, our Dungeon Master, when our next game is. Rick, when's our next game?
Sometime after 323.
Okay, fair enough. Joining us on the show this week are three members of the, quite frankly, the Squadron 42 and the Star Citizen development leadership team. So let's take a few moments, get to know them before we jump into your questions. Rich, just because you're sitting closest to me, and you want to start with you, tell everybody who you are, what you do for Star Citizen.
So I am Richard Tyra, and I am the Senior Game Director for Star Citizen and Squadron 42. And that means I work directly with Chris on the vision for both games, and then I work directly with the teams on executing that vision.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Rick?
I'm the design director for CIG, which means I handle all the design departments for both SC and S42, which is level design and mission design and content design and tech design and systems design and economy design and UI UX design. And so, yep. So yeah, work with my assistant directors to make sure that everything's getting done and it's all on the same page as Rich is leading.
And this is your very first any sort of video appearance for Cloud Imperium Games?
Yeah, my debut.
And how long have you been here?
Like 5 years.
So you've been here 5 years and managed to avoid it that long.
Yeah.
How'd we get you this time?
I said yes.
Fair enough. Sometimes that's all it takes. And JJ, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
So I'm the assistant design director here. So I cover some of the teams that Rick mentioned. So I more directly focus on things like the mission design, system design, technical design, and economy design. So I kind of work on the creative side with those teams and obviously push and help those guys deliver what they need to deliver for the releases.
Okay. So in the last letter for the chairman, that's where it was revealed that you've moved over from Squadron. Well, that's not technically true. You didn't move over. You expanded. You consumed. You basically spread out across two games. You know, bringing Rick and JJ with you. You were originally back with the old actor feature team. You went over to Squadron, led Squadron, got it to feature complete. Came back here. The question I want to ask. How the hell do you run two games?
I don't go home very often, so that's one. I mean, ultimately, I've set up hierarchies on both of those teams to be able to work independently of me when I'm not there. But I spend a lot of time reviewing both sides from Squadron and Star Citizen, and if they were very different games, it would be a very different beast, but obviously they share the same features, they share the same aspects that we want to get from the games. They're obviously different content. But, I have to work with Rick and JJ, who, all three of us were on the core gameplay pillar, and then we did Squadron, and then we've done SC, so we've kind of all been all together. So it's just you have to build up the teams to understand that they can, give them the authority to be able to deliver on decisions and make those decisions and you trust those people to do that, and then ultimately I'll be reviewing the game and give my feedback. But yeah, it's a lot of meetings and a lot of discussions, but it's a lot very enjoyable.
We touched this a little bit in your who are you and what do you do, but I'm curious about the division of labor between the three of you. I think Rick, you obviously feature more on the technical aspects than else.
Yeah, that's my
but tell me how this triumvirate works. Are you just you constantly move together as a pack of three? Do you divide and conquer? How's this work?
A bit of both, yeah. Like whenever there's a new design, we all come together and make sure that we're all on the same page, and then we kind of split off and divide it up amongst ourselves to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that it's something I've always been very cognizant of the fact that I've always wanted to make sure that we're a trio of partnerships, to make sure that we're all on the same page, because we've got such a large team. We want to make sure that we're giving consistent messaging to the team that we're working on. So any new designs or anything new or any new content will all always have an initial brief amongst ourselves before it propagates wide. But then, as Rick says, and we definitely do divide and conquer. So, JJ tends to look at like the events and work with Elliot on the mission feature team and system design. Rick is obviously more technical and from a technical background, is working with Joe is on the tech design team, and then obviously myself is more broad, but we definitely divide and conquer to help. But we always, it's never isolation. We always come back and go back and spread out again and come back and spread out again. So, and we've all got different expertise in different areas, so it works well as a team.
Yeah, I mean, we're all sat right next to each other. There's not a day go by we're not talking to each other. So,
cool. So with that, let's jump into some of the Alpha 323 questions. Obviously, we post, as we normally do, we put a thread up on Spectrum, which is our bespoke communication platform on robertspaceindustries.com. We allowed our citizens to submit questions and then vote on which ones they wanted to see answered most. As we usually do, we've sometimes smashed some of those questions and reworded them a little bit, but there's a bunch in here. The first question right off the bat I want to ask, is Alpha 323 coming out today?
No.
Okay.
Next question.
Next question. How did we end up with fauna like the Copian and Merrick instead of anything we've previously seen before, like the space cow or the storm wall?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
So we've got space cow and also space whale, aside from the cool names, and we've also got, space worm, all these really cool creatures that we're working on in the background, but each of those have like their own unique challenges that are going to take a little bit longer to get out. So with the Copian, we picked a creature that we knew was going to fit some of the early missions that we wanted to do, a ground predator, land-based, that we could get in the game within the time frame that we had. And then the other cool thing is the Merak is our first Boid, and our Boid technology is something that will allow us to scale the number of creatures that we can have on planets in the future. So it's exciting to test that feature early.
And we've been talking about Boids. An Around the Verse episode about Boids was one of the very first things I ever, produced here. They look like the flood in Halo when we first showed that one. So this Boid technology has been a long time coming. And
yeah, and just to summarize like what a Boid is, if you're not aware, just in very simple terms, it's just basically a lightweight AI.
Yeah. So
you have like a human AI, which is a fully fledged combat with what people have been familiar with in 322 and previous. A Copion is the equivalent of a human AI in terms of its complexity, so in terms of its animation, sounds. A Boid is kind of just a lighter version of that. So obviously a bird, it doesn't have all of the same parameters. So a fish, for example, would be a Boid and things. So anything that's got like flocking and you want to have as a group and it's flocking together. So it's just a simpler implementation. So as Rick says, they were two creatures that allowed us to hit the things that we wanted to hit. It doesn't mean that we're not going to push the quasi-grazer and the narwhal, the space whale further down the line, or into the game at some point. But yeah, these two were good ones that we needed to get out the way from a technology standpoint.
And for those wanting to learn more, next week's ISC is dedicated entirely to the creation of the Copian and the Merrick and stuff. So you can check that out on ISC next week. Next question. Economy updates have been few and far between for the persistent universe. It's I think a lot of the easy criticism of stuff in the PU has been the economy. We know that there are some economy updates coming in 323, but we haven't really fully discussed those. So what can you tell us about what's happening in 323?
So we wanted to basically review a bunch of our major items in the game, so looking at like armor, weapons, ships, and basically start to apply more logic to why they are being priced that way. So we started with the weapons and armor basically. So we started looking at things like applying value to different aspects of them. So like looking at pure size and just going, you know, associating a rough material cost with a pistol is obviously going to be less material cost than a bigger rifle or a shotgun or something that's a bit chunkier. So obviously there is a weight of value associated with that. Then also looking at things like manufacturers, because manufacturers have some of them have like a manufacturing quality associated with them, or a prestige. Looking at the different tech levels, we've got some kind of very basic ballistic weapons, and we've got some very advanced, like, you know, electron or like laser weapons that are going to be, you know, a manufacturing cost associated with them. So people can go in and go to the shop and go like, look at the different weapons against each other and go, oh, okay, this makes logical sense because this is rarer, or this looks more expensive and feels more expensive to use. And we did the same thing with the armor too. Then we started looking at some of the bigger ticket items like our ships. So again, we applied very, very similar logic to those, where we kind of go like, okay, let's look at the size, let's look at how they're being used. Are they used to make money? Because if you think about a commercial vehicle in the real world, typically they cost more because you're going to be able to make money with them. And then looking at manufacturers, quality, is it a luxury ship? That then applies more value to as well. And then obviously weighing that up against the actual prices that, you know, you're paying real money for as well, and looking that and making sure there's an association with them there as well. And that also kind of allowed us to like look at a lot of the outliers that we had previously and kind of go, oh, okay, some of them are sitting way far above everything else for some reason, and some of them are sitting way far below everything else. So it's kind of just been a way of leveling it out, applying logic to a lot of that stuff as well. There was a couple of other things that we looked at too. So we also looked at balancing salvage out, because I think that I had not had a thorough pass before. And we kind of saw people just getting millions upon millions of UEC through salvaging. So we felt that that was basically flooding our economy with alpha UEC. So that was causing problems with people. You know, the value of things just go down so much and it becomes meaningless when you can kind of exploit a system like that. So we've applied some more logic to that and brought the kind of like gains down on what you can get from salvage. And then we also took a look at balancing mission rewards. So instead of everyone having to go to make money, you have to default to salvage. We're now looking at the effort versus reward algorithm that we're applying to our missions, and basically going like, hey, how much effort, how much risk, how difficult are they? You know, what are you putting into these missions? Is it super difficult? Okay, you should earn more money from it. Is it long? You should probably earn more money from it as well. So just overall, things should kind of feel a bit more as you would expect.
And this isn't the end of that tuning in 323. This is the next.
No, this is just the first pass.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
The next pass anyway.
Yeah, I mean, on that note for economy, I think I touched on this in the letter for the chairman. I think a lot of these systems have been around for a long time, like claim timers, insurance, obviously the economy values for missions, and they've kind of were balanced correctly as and when they were done a long time ago. You know, the game's been out for a long time. But we need to start bringing these systems a bit of more cohesion of how they talk to each other. So going forward, you know, I think the players and the community should expect to see, I think, some significant changes to those systems as we move towards trying to create a more cohesive experience in the game. Because I think right now, if you know how to play, if you just take 322 as a good example, if you really know where to go, like JJ said, you can just make millions upon millions. And once you've got so much money and everything is linked to progression with money, you can just buy your way and that's it, right? And you lose the desire or the motivation to keep playing the game. So I think we want to build that motivation in that, you know, okay, I'll go and do this because I enjoy doing salvage and it gives me this reward. So, and then obviously the other side of the coin, we don't really have a lot of money sinks in the game right now. So in terms of insurance, I think, you know, you just claim back your ship blows up, you just claim it back immediately. You die, you know, we've talked about death of a spaceman for a long time, but yeah, we want to start bringing all these systems in place, and I think going forward we will have some more changes on that front.
So, and of course, we'll have a story next quarter with Benoit and Andre and stuff about the future development of quantum and how that'll play into that. So we don't need to touch too much on that now, just for the folks who are in chat asking. All that tees up probably one of the most.
Just going to say one thing though. I hate the name quantum because we've already got quantum in the game, so I'm definitely going to be pushing to change that name.
Hey, rebrand, man, rebrand. So all of that tees up the question that has frankly has dominated the chat since we first started talking about this 5 minutes ago now. Will there be a wipe in 323?
Yes, so we're going to look to wipe Alpha UEC and rentals, I believe, and that's purely because if we don't, all of the analytics that we get back from people playing the game are going to be basically false reports, because people are going to be using all of their banked cash, and it'll just be like, oh, people are just buying all of these now more expensive items, for example, and that then tells us like, oh, do we need to make these more expensive? No, not really. It's just that people are using giant cash reserves that they've been keeping for a long time. So while it might be disappointing for some people to lose the money they've built up, it really, really helps us in informing us, like, have we made, have we pushed the economy in the right direction so we can keep making iterations and informed decisions going forward.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing to note on as well. We're a live game. Just because we change the prices in 323 doesn't mean we'll then change them in 4.0. We want to put them in. This is our first rebalance or releveler. We'll evaluate, and that's why we want to do the wipe. We'll evaluate, okay, look at the data, and then base our next decisions on that data.
One of the other things that's been on the public roadmap for 323 has been the reputation hostility system changes. What should players expect in terms of gameplay with the reputation hostility feature card committed to the 323 roadmap? Thus far in the testing cycle, we have not seen any evidence of any changes in features or gameplay with regards to this card.
Yeah, rep-based hostility wasn't really for 323 so much as future. It's setting us up for success in 4.0 and Pyro and the systems that we want to do there. Like the system itself is cool. It allows us to set up factions that you can gain rep with, and they become your allies and help you out and come to your aid when you're being attacked, and vice versa. You can piss somebody off, and that they're mad at you and they'll attack you on sight. You're not going to see a lot of that implemented in Stanton right now, but we wanted to get it in so we could start testing it in Stanton ahead of Pyro. The first place we want to do it is in Grimhex. We're planning to set that up as a neutral zone in the near future, so you'll see more of it then.
And we do have some settlements, I believe, with the Duster faction in 323, where if you do encounter them, the AI are neutral to you. So if you go and you see and you might have a delivery mission to that settlement, they won't attack you unless you attack them. So there is some small instance where, like Rick says, we're testing out that feature, and then it's really more of laying the groundwork for future.
We just need more feedback on that feature and as we continue to roll it out.
Okay. So this next question comes with a very specific set of instructions. Let me make sure I get this right. This is for JJ. Questions for JJ. Tom, follow me over to JJ. Sniper glint. WTF, man.
So Sniper Glint was basically our first kind of proper foray into giving you some good feedback against someone who's using a sniper rifle. So this was actually a very low development cost feature that we wanted to basically try out. And it's not to say that there are other things we can't do later that might be better for the game that we're heading towards eventually. But this was something we wanted to try out purely because when we start adding more and more systems into the game that kind of lead us to this death of a spaceman kind of future, which for people who don't know, it's basically there's going to be more punishment through death. Death is going to be it's going to be a very big deal. And if you have a moment where you die and there was nothing you could have done about it because you had no idea about what happened, that's where it becomes a big frustration. If I come and kill you with a shotgun, you probably could have heard me coming and you could have prepared for it and shot me. You see me as part of that process. Whereas when we start looking at shooting people over massive distances that we have on our giant planets, if you dial in your scope right, you can shoot someone from like over 1 kilometer away and you're not going to be able to see them. So it was our first attempt at looking at what kind of feedback we can start providing people to kind of cut through some of that frustration. Now, there are other things that we can do in the future that I think support that as well. So like looking at bigger muzzle flashes that you can see at longer distances, and like improving our whiz-by system and hit reaction and feedback and things like that. Those are things we can work on, but they take a lot more time to kind of get right. So ultimately, we want to play with the Sniper Glint system, see what people think, see what we think, dial it in more if we like it, or if we decide it's not the ideal solution that we eventually want, we can always turn it off. It was very low cost, like I say. So ultimately, it's good that people are giving us feedback because it's going to inform us on how we want to move forward.
I think you make a good point there that this is alpha. This is where we test ideas.
Yep.
You know, not every. You know, you can sit there, we can debate it, and I'm sure internally there were people that said, no, I hate this. And internally some people said, no, this is going to be great. I hate snipers. You know, I'm going to love this stuff. We don't always have to make that determination internally. We can put it in, especially if it's a low effort thing like this, and find out for certain.
Yep.
And Sniper Glint's a great example of that. So keep your feedback coming. You can direct it directly to JJ, Johnny Giusevius, Manchester Goods Yard.
You have to spell my name right, though.
You have to spell his name right, though. The front desk will not deliver it to you if you don't spell his name right. And I'm not going to tell you how to spell it, so that's the challenge rating for you. All right. Rick, this might be a question for you. Why can we scan other players' ships but not our own?
Well, ship scanning is meant to just be detecting what's outside of your ship, right? It's air exploitation of the world around you. So that's kind of inherent in the nature of it. If I understand the question correctly, it's like, I want to be able to detect stuff on my ship, which is going to be handled by FPS scanning, which is one of the features that we're working on moving over from Squadron to SE right now.
Okay, fair enough. That seems like that was what they were talking about. So, okay. Rich, we've talked about master modes quite a bit. It's had 2 CitizenCon presentations. It's had an ISC. It's had at least 3 SCLs since we first started talking about it 2 years ago. At 2 CitizenCons ago, rather.
Sure.
Technically 3 CitizenCon ago now. We haven't talked about where it came from. Like what was the problem? And why was this deemed the solution?
Well, first off, I think the fact that we're working on a live game, the issue is that we should always be looking at, even if we've got a system that's out in the wild, we should be looking at evaluating it and does it deliver the gameplay that we want, that the community wants, that Chris wants. So when we looked at the combat as a whole, you know, and we're talking a long time ago now. I mean, I was probably still in Star Citizen. It was probably pre-Squadron when we started talking about master modes. A lot of the combat that we saw across the broad spectrum of the community, not just the new players and not just the very well experienced players, but the broad spectrum, basically became jousting. And, you know, we felt that we could do better than that. Now, I know that there's a lot of discussion points around master modes where we're talking about lowering the ceiling cap. And, you know, that was never the intention. That's not our inspiration. Our intention really is to try and create a system that is fair to use for all players, that allows players to come on and still feel like they can engage in the game and compete, but still reward the very best pilots. And, you know, master modes is, you know, the iteration that it is today, it's been through like probably 20, 25 iterations of different tweaks and changes, and we want to try this and we want to try this. And even the iteration that we're going live with in 3.23, that's not the end, that's just the beginning of that process. We will put it live, I mean, I already had a meeting literally this morning to discuss with Yogi about spool times between SCM and nav, or what are we going to do with snub fighters that don't have a quantum drive? Like, do they have a nav mode? And I was like, well, yeah, they should do. So the expectation is that master modes came from the goal to try and improve the overall flight experience for both combat and non-combat in the game, so that you can feel like if you want to be a space trucker, you know, that's cool, you can switch in. Or if you want to be, you know, a trader or a miner or combat. So it's about taking something and making it accessible to new players, that it's has a lot of depth for existing players to then take, you know, advantage of. And, you know, really that was the inspiration. There's never really a moment in time where you start going, this is a problem, we just need to fix it. It's more about you evaluate these systems over a longer period of time and then start to think of solutions about how to improve it. And then those solutions grow and grow into a new system that you go, oh, this could be a solution that we could do. And, you know, with master modes, I think we did, you know, you mentioned all the times that we've talked about it, but we've also done several tests with the community before we've even got here, outside of just the 323 Evocati and PTU. We did, you know, we tested it in Arena Commander, we tested it with players a long time ago. So this is the you know, this is the result of a lot of effort and work by a lot of people to get it where we are now. And I think I believe in it. And now it's about getting it to the broader audience, and then we evaluate that feedback and we tweak it and tune it and get it to where we think it could be. Because I think you always have to change the foundation before you change, you know, you can start. You either have to do revolution or evolution. Yeah. And I think with the previous system, the evolution wasn't going to give us what we wanted from the end result. So we had to go slightly back a bit to then go forward.
You touched on something I think we're going to touch on a couple times before we're done today. This idea of going to a wider audience to get a broader test going. I think it's sometimes easy to forget that the live environment is still our alpha test environment, and we get a concurrency there that we don't get in Evocati, we don't get in PTU, even when we open it up wide. You know, even a fully wide open PTU doesn't get the amount of stress that the live testing environment is. So sometimes it's like you can only, there's this idea, and again, we'll talk about it when we get there, that you just let a thing cook, you just let a thing cook, you just let a thing cook, you just let a thing cook. It's like our biggest stove, our biggest oven in this analogy here is the live alpha environment. That's where we can put the most stress on a feature. That's where we can find the causes of issues. That's where we can best find the solutions of issues are there. So it's important. So that's the next step of master mode development. It's been through all these internal phases. It's been through Evocati. It's been through PTU. Now it's time to go to live.
Yeah,
and be tested there.
To be honest, I've been playing master modes for a long time in Squadron. You know, getting a feel for it. Does it feel right? And you know, sometimes you have to sit with a feature and play it and get the everyday scenario. You can't just take half an hour and go, oh yeah, it's approved. Like, you have to play the game and play it for yourself in all the different scenarios, and then make a judgment, and then, you know, get that feedback, and then we can tweak and improve.
I think the interesting thing is as well, because it's been going for quite a while, and obviously we've been playing it internally a lot, we've had a lot of very, very passionate pilots, star citizen pilots at the company who at first were, you know, they felt adverse to the change, like some people in the community are as well. But it's been amazing seeing them playing with it, spending time with it, and coming round on it and going, actually, this is really, really fun. Like, I was, you know, I prefer this now. So it's been very cool seeing that process happen internally, and it's going to be interesting to see how it develops in SC as well.
While we're still talking about 323 here, the ePTU currently has issues with input delay, desync, lag, whatever you want to call it, performance issues. What's the deal there? What's causing it, and what are we doing to fix it?
So first off, we're evaluating all of the analytics that we get back, because, you know, there's one thing that we get, obviously the issue council reports that, you know, are very, very useful for us, that people go out their way and spend their free time and testing the game and working on the game for us. And giving us the issue council reports that we take in. We also obviously have our own internal teams evaluating that. And the interaction lag itself seems to be linked to the network side of things, where kind of the network is getting throttled, and it's essentially related to the RL and the server separation. So it's something that obviously we haven't experienced before in 322. But it's been very, very tricky to try and find out what is causing that problem. And one of the biggest things that we've seen that exacerbates that problem is when the server performance dips below a certain value, that's when it starts to back up. So there wasn't really any silver bullet. There never really is when it gets to things like performance. It's always a death by 1,000 cuts. So when we're looking at the interaction lag, we've had pretty much a lot of our top engineers from both the core technology group and the gameplay side looking at performance improvements that we can do to basically mitigate the interaction lag as much as possible. And I think the last ePTU or the PTU that we went to previously, it was very minimal. I think because obviously we catch all these reports, we have debugging in there that captures all of the data, and that debug actually creates performance problems for us because it slows down the performance. That we don't get that debugging live. So we think we've got it, and we think we've done enough to make it so that we're not seeing it, or we're not seeing it anymore in the PTU reports. There is obviously still certain bugs and things that might appear as interaction lag and are not interaction lag. So, and when you come to performance, it's never black and white. There's always, unless you find something that's like, oh, this ship is intercolliding with a wall and it's causing massive amounts of stalling. But with the interaction lag, it was just one of those ones that was very difficult to track down. And cross fingers, we think we have done that, but only time will tell.
While we're on this topic, let's say another question that follows up on it here. So at the time this question was sent, the PTU was in a very rough state. Some would still, some are arguing. You look online, folks are arguing about this, what state it's in right now. This question is simply, how concerned are you with avoiding another 318?
Well, I don't want another 318, if that's the short question. The long answer, I think you have to look. You have to look at it from two different points of view, or not really two different points of view. You have to evaluate 2 points of view before we decide whether a patch should go live. I think the first point of view is the fact that you want to evaluate the gameplay experience. Have we made the gameplay better? Are the new features in there polished and working as intended? Are the existing features working? Have we lost anything that from a previous patch cycle that we want to make sure is fully functioning? And that is a whole team-wide effort. That's not an individual person. That is from all the reports that we get. We then obviously canvas live QA. We have the player experience team. We have publishing. We have the development leadership. We're all playing it ourselves, getting a good sense of, is the quality of the game what we want it to be in terms of the gameplay experience, in terms of the features, when it works well. Then the other side of the coin, where it becomes trickier, is because we're an alpha product, we are releasing foundational technology into the game, into the wider audience. So for example, this one is the replication layer and the server split, which is the precursor to server meshing. So 318 was another foundational moment where we did persistent entity streaming. I don't believe it will be the same as 318 personally, but I'll soon find out. But when it comes to that foundational technology, similar to what I was discussing in terms of the interaction lag, when you put it to Evocati and then ePTU and PTU, we're only getting a fraction of concurrency compared to live. So when we're looking at some of the issues that are performance related and are stability related, we might think we're golden, and then you go to a live audience and something else pops up that we're like, oh, this is a problem, we need to hotfix it, we need to evaluate it. So we could spend the next 2 years just trying to get it to be absolutely bug-free and then go live and it still have issues because it's such foundational technology. It's not like we've bought something off the shelf and gone, slot it in, it works as intended, great. So we're proving something out that's never been done before, or at least we've never done it before. So we need to make sure that when we're testing this, that we test it as broad as possible. And then that is the balance between, okay, is the gameplay what we want it to be, but we might be introducing something that is potentially reducing stability or reducing performance. And when you look at reducing performance, that then has an impact on all the other things. So interaction lag, for example, people going up to doors and going, the doors are broken. Well, actually, no, that's just interaction lag. Your interaction's being backed up from, or the elevators are not working, or I'm stuck in my cockpit seat and I can't get out. It's not because your cockpit seat's broken, it's because the interaction was being absorbed and it was being queued in this giant queue trying to get through. So ultimately, you have to look at all of these different parameters, from the performance to stability, the new technology that we need to test, and all of the gameplay side of things, and you have to make a judgment call about, you know, whether it's beneficial for us to put it into the live audience so that we can get as much feedback as possible to then continue to work on it, to continue along the development pipeline towards where we ultimately want to be, which is we've released server meshing, we can have servers that have got hundreds and thousands of players playing all together. So it's never as black and white as just, it's good enough, let's ship it. It's always about, well, we go, okay, are we going to accept that we might run into more issues than we'd like to, but we need to do this to test this thing? And when we say testing a specific thing, it's also not about saying, oh, well, this issue was live on PTU. Sometimes that issue is live on PTU, but we don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
Because it's so complex.
That's the big one.
And then it's like, well, we can keep putting speculative fixes in, and speculative fix and speculative fix, and optimize this area of the code and optimize this. And is it the networking? Is it the player interaction system? Is it game code? And we're never, sometimes you need to go broad to be able to find it. And I think that's where it's never as easy as it sounds.
I'm so happy you said that. That's the big thing that I think gets lost in the you should just let it cook argument. It's that we can see this is broken, this is broken, this is broken. That's not the same as seeing the cause.
Exactly.
And in order to find a solution, you have to find the cause. So we can see all these things, and we look at it. We looking at the same thing that our players are looking at, and see that, okay, that's broken, that's broken, that's broken. But we're not finding the root cause of it, because concurrency is only at this level. And so putting it on our live alpha environment, that's the big thing that environment can do for us. It stresses it to the point where now causes reveal themselves and solutions can be built.
Yes, exactly. And to be clear, we'd never push something out that was knowingly just broken across the board.
Right.
Like, we would never want to do that, because that would just be a poor experience. People would stop playing the game, and then we wouldn't get the concurrency for us to be able to find the issues. So we're always going to want to strike that balance between, you know, we are not a fully live polished game. We are an alpha game, and we have to strike that balance with, we want to keep improving the game every patch so that people come to it and they enjoy the gameplay experience. I mean, that's my ultimate goal. But we still have these technology ambitions for us to be able to achieve the overall goal. And those are steps along the way. And this will be the same when we do server meshing. We will have scenarios with server meshing that it's such a foundational technology that we will find things and we will fix them and fix them and fix them and fix them. But we will definitely, I can guarantee it right now, when we put server meshing live, we will find issues that either have been exacerbated by something or XYZ. So that's just the nature of the beast.
All right. Two more questions about 323 before we move into the near future and stuff. These are all big ticket direction things, so sorry for backing so many of them up on you, Rich, here. It seems like there were a lot of things thrown into this patch. 323 is arguably the biggest patch Star Citizen's ever attempted. And then even with cargo and hangars coming in at 323X, it's still the biggest patch I think we've put out. With 3.0, you might be able to argue certain things.
Sure.
Was it too much? Or should we have done smaller? Should this have been the 323, 1, 2, 3, 4 with all these things from the get-go? Was it too much? Is it just this is how it happens? What's your view on this?
I think from my perspective, and ultimately I was responsible for this, so this helps.
Go big or go home.
Yeah. I didn't want the transition of features from Squadron 42 into Star Citizen to take like 12 months. Because what it would have done is, first off, people have seen these features for a long time. And if we're spending 6, 8, 9, 12 months getting them over into the game, I think it would have detracted away from all of the features that we want to add to Star Citizen. So I wanted to make sure, and I wanted to push the team to deliver the features into Star Citizen in a good manner, so that we could then transition on to the features that are really more specific to Star Citizen, like cargo, like resource network, like base building, like the features that are not going to be in Squadron. So I wanted to make sure that we tried our best to have that to be as shortest period of time possible, so that, you know, there's the old adage, if you've got 4 weeks, you'll take 4 weeks. And I wanted to make sure that we tried to get it in a good manner as possible, so that we can start moving Star Citizen forward. And I think ultimately, you know, that was my decision. I stand by that decision, and you know, that's the reason.
Yeah, I think Tyler made a post on Spectrum yesterday about what our expectations of 2024 is, what we want to hit. We want 2024 to be a watershed year in the development of Star Citizen, with some pretty big milestones this year.
Yep.
So yeah, so a big part of that, and you set that goal, and part of pursuing that goal is you got to get all this Squadron stuff in there now, get it out of the way so we can start on the new stuff.
Well, absolutely. I needed to get that stuff done, so that I can move on to the things that we want to add to the game this year, that I think will start to define Star Citizen as a massively multiplayer online game.
I often say there's at times there's very little difference between the people who make Star Citizen and the people who play Star Citizen. I think sometimes we're just as anxious to get to the next thing, to put this stuff, to get this stuff in and get these features in, as our players are to play them.
Absolutely. I mean, when I look at Star Citizen itself, it's a concatenation of a lot of features and a lot of content.
Good word.
I want it to be a cohesive experience that is all tied together, and I want to get there as soon as possible. I want somebody to be able to play the game and understand all the things that they have available to them, and I want that to be a good onboarding experience, and then to have thousands of hours of gameplay and content for people to be able to play. Now, don't get me wrong, we have a lot of gameplay already in the game, but it's in isolated pockets. It's like, if you want to just be a miner, great, you can go and do mining, you can do that loop. But I want the connections. I want the interwebbing. That's the difference between features and content and a game. And I want to push towards that as quickly as possible.
Okay. So we got about 20 minutes left. We've done 2/3 of the show on 323 and stuff. Let's go into the near future. Anytime we put these question threads up, half the questions are about the patch, and half the questions are what's next. So let's start talking a little bit about what's next and some bigger direction stuff. Cargo elevators, personal persistent hangars, that stuff, freight elevator stuff, that's been pushed into a 323.x patch. We're not going to sit here and say whether it's 0.1 or 0.2 or whatever. We've learned that lesson. Talk to us about the current state. How's it going?
Oh, this one's me as well.
How's it going? Yes.
So I played cargo. I loaded it up. I went through the flow. I went to my storage access. I requested all my personal gear. It was delivered to me. I then went to the ASOP terminal. I requested my ship. The ship came up on its ship elevator. I went down, and then I went to my freight elevator, and then I requested my goods, and we had some issues. And those issues that have been resolved, or are in the process of being resolved now, you know, ultimately I was able to step through those issues to be able to get to the point where I could get my cargo and then manually load my cargo up into the ship and then take off. But if you look at cargo, nobody can play the game without going through cargo. It's a foundational feature. Like, you can't, it's like inventory was a foundational feature. You can't play the game without just interacting with the system. If you want to get a ship, you interact with the system. You want to get something from your inventory, you interact with this system. So we can't be in a position where we're releasing it in a state that is essentially golden from the get-go. So we needed more time to be able to do that. Akin to what I just said, if you've got 4 weeks, you take 4 weeks. I didn't want to push it to the next patch. I didn't feel it was needed to get to the next patch. We are pushing hard to get it into a dot patch for the 323 cycle. And that is currently the intention, but we won't push it live until it is working and is infallible, because it's a core feature. It's a core feature in the flow. It's the first thing you do. You wake up from your hab, you go to your hangar and you get your ship. So it needs to be solid and it needs to be really good. So we just need to make sure that it is the best it can be before we push it live.
JJ, we'll give Rich a break here.
Yeah. Back to back to back.
Once the personal persistent instance hangars come out in the 323X patch, will our landing zone remain the same as what players choose when 323 drops? They set the home base and then you can't change it for the time being. We're going to have an opportunity to change it again when the point X comes out, or will they be stuck with whatever choice they make in 323?
Hopefully Rich isn't next, because this is quite a quick answer, if you wanted a break. But yeah, so basically we're not doing a full reset, so your home location is as it was when you last set your character. When we do a full reset in future, that will give you an opportunity to choose a new home location. But I believe, and people will probably correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but you can use the character reset function on the website. But, and I'll look into the camera when I say this will mean that you lose everything that you've earned in game. So if that function is there and available, just be mindful when you actually use it, just because you will lose your UEC, you'll lose your bought ships in game, and things like that. So if you are really, really desperate to choose a new home location, I believe that is an option that you can pick and choose.
So we'll just assume that's off the table, though, because you don't want to lose all your stuff. So
correct.
The answer is actually...
I would wait or move your things manually.
Okay.
To a new location.
Okay. And then the follow-up question, obviously the 4 starter locations in 323, Microtech, Hurston, Area 18, Crusader. No love for Grimhex?
So not in 323. This question coming up actually kind of spurred me on to go and investigate this more to find out what was involved. We do actually, funnily enough, internally have Grimhex as a developer location, so it is set up to be a home location for us. But there are potential knock-ons with that, so we can't just switch it on and assume everything's going to be okay, because if you think about the landing zones, they're huge, they've got loads of facilities, some of them are set up for the new player experience and things like that. So obviously Grimhex is a much smaller, condensed location. You've also got the problem that if you start to leave the station, you're more than likely going to be around other people who are going to be ready and willing to shoot you. So if a new player then accidentally picks Grimhex, not understanding the implications, that could be very frustrating. So there's a few things that I need to look into and chase, but something I want to do. So I think we can definitely do it in the future.
Okay, that all makes sense. That's our near future 323X whatnot. Let's talk some general questions, some general direction process questions. I don't often get a chance to have game leadership like top of the pyramid. There's literally a pyramid now. Top of the pyramid stuff here. So I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to ask you some bigger picture stuff. Keeping in mind that there is a little thing called CitizenCon coming in October this year, so we're not going to touch on everything and whatnot. Rick, I think this one's for you. Arena Commander.
Yeah.
How do you see Arena Commander? Sometimes it seems like it's really important. Sometimes it seems like CIG has completely forgotten about it. Sometimes there's a theaters of war. Sometimes there's years of complete silence.
I mean, the three of us spent a lot of time working on theaters of war. It's it's something that's very passionate for us. Like, we're excited to do things with AC, but like the priority right now is Star Citizen. And one of the ways that we're leveraging Arena Commander is that it's a great test bed for some of the features that aren't quite ready for content. So like something that may not be ready for an actual patch, but stuff that we want to test out, like resource networks, engineering, stuff that we can test in a specific game mode in Arena Commander and get some insights before we go full content with it in Star Citizen. So.
Well, hot off the press, I did have a conversation with Jens this morning about potentially is the specific word here, that we might use Arena Commander to validate the new spawn closet for FPS AI.
Okay. That's it. You had a lot of build up there, and then how's that going to manifest?
Well, we've never had PvE FPS in Arena Commander.
It's
there we go.
Like a horde mode, game mode. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure that the lead wasn't buried there. Thank you for clarifying.
I thought you were Jared. I thought you had that.
No, I had it. I'm asking the question that somebody was. Okay, next 7 questions are for Rich. No, okay. JJ, again, talking a bit bigger picture stuff. The go no go process, the very way that these decisions are made to whether this feature should be included and whatnot. This process has changed and evolved over the years. It's not like we just set something up in 2014 and kept the same process since then. Talk me through.
You hope not.
Huh? What?
I hope we didn't.
Well, I've been here. I'm on a decade here. I know we did. I know we did. Here, talk to me about what the go no go process is like today.
Yeah, so for us, it's a much more gradual process. There's not really one moment in time where it's like, is this thing ready or not? It's more of a constant review of how features are progressing. And we like to be very hands-on with the team and with the features. So typically, we will be playing the features regularly, individually, as a group, or with the team that's actually making the feature, giving feedback, trying to harden it, and also at the same time, evaluating where it's at. So there are several moments in time as we're going where there will be a point where we have to decide, is it ready or not? But there's no kind of like line in the sand necessarily where we go, this is definitely not going or this is definitely going. So there'll be points in the process, like we had to do with cargo, where it's basically like, this is a core feature, it's not where we want it to be. At this moment in time, we want to push it a bit further out to make sure we've got the time available for it. But ultimately, kind of as I say, the process has changed for us in that, you know, there used to kind of be more one date, everyone's working towards that date. We are constantly trying to be on the ball with all of these individual features and knowing exactly where they're at and if we're happy with them. Well,
you know, for cargo, it was, you came to me on the day of ISC and was like, is it in 323.0 or is it in a .x? And I was like, I'm still deciding.
So you want to air the laundry? You want to air the laundry? Okay. So the day that our cargo episode was supposed to air, did air, was the day of the go no go. So I had 2 versions of hosting. We often do, you know, where it says, you know, it's going to be in 323, and one is, you know, it's still targeting 323, or one where it's not going to be in 323, it's going to be in 323X. And you might remember we were so good this season about getting all our episodes out at 8 a.m. Pacific on the dot because we moved editorial over here. We've done a lot of structural improvements thanks to David and Tom over there who've made things a lot better. We had a great streak going of every episode right there at 8, and then it's like, well, what version do we put out? And he's literally in there, surrounded by everybody, playing it. That whole story he's telling you, playing it, going through. And I'm just like pacing out behind.
Breathing on the window.
And then he was like, come on, which version? Just to see whether it gets the go or go no. And it was we still don't know yet. We're gonna give him another 2 weeks, and then we're gonna make the hard call.
Yes.
So it was like, all right, so we go with what we call the truth in the moment. And the truth in that moment is that it was still targeted for 323, so we go out.
And I wanted to give the team every opportunity to be able to get it into the game, but it needed to pass the certain level of quality bar to get in there. And ultimately, they didn't manage to do that. And, you know, that was a decision I had to make.
All right, we got 8 minutes. Let's see if we can't rapid fire some of these. Just a few more questions here. Rick.
Yeah.
Is this even a thing? We've seen a hot take about bed logging not fitting the vision of what Star Citizen is going to be. Care to elaborate on what you're thinking about doing with bed logging and how logging in and out will look in the future? Is there a change to bed logging? Did I miss something?
I'm not sure what that hot take is, but we're definitely in favor of bed logging. In fact, in the future, we plan to give the player buffs for getting a good night's sleep in bed, and have that be part of the game loop. But we don't want to limit the player to that. It's like having a bed shouldn't be a requirement to log out of the game. In fact, in the future, we want, no matter where you log out, that's where you log back in. You have all the same missions, like we want your place in the universe to be persistent no matter where you log out. So that's where we're going.
So it'll be an option, but not a requirement.
Correct.
Okay. Rich, we're coming back to you. These are two big ones. What do you want first? Bad guys or solo players?
Let's do bad guys.
Okay.
You're a bad solo.
Let's see. So currently, it is very hard to be a bad guy in Star Citizen. Basically, you get huge disadvantages having crime stat, and there's not really any place to go besides Grim Hex. What's the future hold for the bad guys?
Well, Pyro is a good one. So, ultimately, I want bad guys. I don't think bad guys are always the bad guys. If you're a pirate, you might have moral motivations.
Corsairs.
But essentially, we want gameplay to be associated in areas that are lawful and unlawful. So obviously in Stanton there should be a greater risk and greater reward for you being able to pirate, but then you're going to run into the issues that, you know, the question alludes, that, you know, you get a crime stat, you're going to be hunted down, what's happening. So when we start to have Pyro and we start to develop those systems and we just start to develop the gameplay between multiple systems as well, we want Pyro to offer lots of opportunity for players to be able to role play as a pirate or a gang member, or they will have opportunity to work more in the shadows for like more of a organized crime. So for example, that you can then go into a lawful zone as an organized criminal and be able to perform more criminal activities, but from the shadows. So the expectation is that we want to create gameplay loops, and we've actually discussed those internally. They're planned out and have guilds that you can join that offer unlawful activities. And at the start, you might just be a thug with a ship, but by the end of it, you might be John Wick. So it's about having that progression within the game. And the other side of things is piracy or unlawful gameplay doesn't always have to be against lawful players. So that's something that in Stanton right now, if you want to go and be a pirate, you have to pirate the people who don't necessarily want to be pirated, right? And that always leads to a winner and a loser. And I think when you're looking at a game, and this has come up a lot in Star Citizen, are we a PvE game or are we a PvP game? From my perspective, we're both. And I want to create loops that support both. And that means on the PvP or the piracy side, where you want to become a pirate, I want to offer you to be able to pirate PvE and AI players, or should I say AI agents, and obviously players. But I also want to provide activities within Pyro that are beneficial, that force you against other pirates as well, so that you can have really cool, engaging PvP combat against people who want to have really cool, engaging PvP combat. And that means putting systems in place that, A, you can find where that is, and bringing people to areas that they know it's going to happen. So there is definitely lots of plans for both bad guys and PvP, and lawful guys and lawful PvP. So I think the first aspect is that we need more than one system that is just fully policed by the advocacy or the UEE. We need to have systems where it's more appropriate.
And of course, we use the term bad guys colloquially. Shout out to the bad girls out there.
Yes. Guys, girls, and robots.
All right. 2 more questions here. The other big one for you. What place is there for a solo player in Star Citizen? We're just going to go get a drink and leave Rich.
Yeah. I think there should be a lot. Obviously, if you want to be a solo player, just because we're a massively multiplayer online game shouldn't preclude you from playing solo. I've played many MMOs where I've just played by myself and got through to the end game. There will obviously be certain prerequisites as you move towards the larger goals in the game that are going to make it difficult for you to achieve as a solo player. For example, if you wanted to try and earn an Idris in the game and earning reputation to be able to, figure out how to be able to manufacture your own Idris, and then you need to go and gather all the resources to be able to do that, that is a very, very large initiative. Almost to the point where when you even have that Idris, you're going to need multiple people to fly it proficiently. So I think, that doesn't mean that there is not going to be a large amount of content that is achievable by solo players, that they'll be able to have enjoyment and combat, for trading, to mining, to salvage, to all the other aspects of gameplay that we want to be. If you want to be a farmer, you can go and be a farmer, right? But the expectation is that, we are a massive multiplayer online game. We will have a large amount of content that is available to solo players, but that does mean there will be some content that is easier to achieve with more than one player.
Much like real life. It's like there's lots of things you can do on your own, and some things you have to accept a little bit of help on.
Yeah, we're not putting hard limits on. You can always try and do it yourself.
Absolutely.
Like you can get all the materials for an Idris. You can build it yourself. Like if you
there will be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in fact, in the future, we've talked about the possibility of being able to hire NPCs to help you fly your ship and stuff like that. I mean, that's probably far down the road, but it's something we want to do to enable that kind of gameplay. So.
Yeah, that's literally probably the oldest thing, going all the way back to the Wingman's Hangar days. So happy to hear that it's not completely gone.
It's in the roadmap.
Yep.
All right. Last question. This one also has a specific instruction for it. Make sure I get this right. Okay, hold on. Go ahead and follow me to JJ Tom. Hey, JJ. Why the F don't we have night vision? WTF, man.
Well.
Is that another WTF? Come on.
Night vision, yo. Night vision.
Okay, so night vision. So I've got some good news. I saw and was playing with night vision on weapon optics yesterday. So we have got it to a point where we can put them on the optic lenses using our new optic tech that came in with 323. This is not to say that this is coming out with 323, to be very clear, but it does mean that we can look to a fairly close release whenever we feel like we can get the content out to people, so people can actually start using these. And it works, you know, it exposes more light when you're on the dark side of a planet, so you can actually look around and see what you're trying to shoot. And it's a little bit more uncomfortable to look around in a well-lit environment, kind of as you'd expect. So that's the good news. The slightly less good news is that I know people are probably going to start asking, when can we get it on visors and ship cockpits and things like that? The answer there is we need to assign some more time to it. It's a bit more complex. The new optic system gave us a really good opportunity to play with some of those settings, but the visors and the cockpits aren't set up in the same way as those. So it's something that we're going to start looking into and finding where we can fit it in the roadmap, because we definitely do want to provide that for people, but we've got some design questions to answer first and some engineering to do as well. So that will come a bit further down the line.
Two things to add to that. One is that we've broken the back of getting it working. So now it's more of just a content and scheduling problem rather than a technical problem, which is great, because it means, and it is really good, by the way.
Yeah, it looks great.
And the one thing is that it's not, I want to make sure that everyone's clear. It's not true night vision, it's light enhancement. So when you're looking at something, even though it's on the dark side of the moon, you still get a very good clear picture. You can still call things out, but it's not what you'd imagine as stereotypical night vision.
It's like upping the exposure on a camera.
Yeah.
With
It's the difference between projecting a light, like an infrared light, and seeing the red infrared light versus just amplifying the light that's already there, like a starlight.
Yeah. So it will give you, for the player's perspective, it will give them what they want, they can see, and they'll be able to pick things out in the darkness. But I just want to clarify that's what we're working towards, because that's a more achievable solution for us. Still gives us what we want, and like JJ said, we do want to then propagate that to the visors.
So yes, you can send your letters of encouragement to JJ, Johnny Asivius, Manchester Goods Yard, and don't worry about the spelling on this one. Just tell them how much you want it. All right, that's it, gentlemen.
All right.
502, you survived. Rick, you survived your very first video of any kind for CIG, and it was an hour-long live show. How do you feel?
I feel great. This was fun.
Good.
I'll do it again.
Folks watching home, don't forget, check out yesterday's Inside Star Citizen. Detailed all the different features and content coming in the Alpha 323 season of patches. 3330.1 point whatever. Check that out. Plus, I revealed the new Mirai Pulse, which is a very, very small little hover bike that seems like it can go anywhere a person can go, and I'm sure that's not going to cause any manner of trouble in 323. So check that out, and then come back next week. It's our Creature Feature 2 next week, I think, or might call it Paws and Claws. I don't know. I made the mistake.
Hold on, you didn't give us names.
Huh?
I've been watching your shows. You've been giving people names. What are our names?
Well, okay. Well, JJ's been owner of the coolest name in the whole company for years. Johnny Asivius. It's a totally cyberpunk name. He was only slightly derailed when Cairo Goodbrand was around here.
What was Duncan? Name. Arena Commander guy or something?
He was Commander guy at the Arena Man. He was Arena Man. Duncan is the Moist Master.
The moist master.
Yeah, Will.
Okay, actually, I don't want to know.
I'm done here. Can I go now?
I didn't think
I'm out.
I didn't think you knew what you were asking when you started the thing.
Yeah, I'm out.
But yeah, all right. So and then we come on, and then next week Star Citizen Live is off. I'll be traveling to Belgium for the wonderful annual Beacon convention there on Saturday. So if you're going to that, I'll see you there. So for Star Citizen Live, I'm Jared. That was Rich. That was Rick. That was JJ. It's David and Tom behind the keys. Pete on the headset. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week on IC, everybody. Take care.